Gentlemen, there comes a moment in every man's life when a woman he once gave his time, his loyalty, even his heart to, chooses another man, and in that moment the ego screams, the heart cracks, and the mind spirals. But what if I told you, you didn't lose anything? In fact, if you handle this right, you win. Let's talk about why. When she chooses another man, it feels like rejection and it stings deep. You start to question everything. Was I not good enough? Did I miss something? Was he better looking, richer, more exciting? The mind races to fill in the blanks with painful assumptions. But here's the truth most men forget in the heat of heartbreak. Rejection is not always punishment, it can be redirection. It's the universe, life, God, whatever you believe in removing someone from your path who was not meant to walk the entire journey with you. And I know that's hard to hear when emotions are fresh. But think about it, how many times have you wanted something so badly, only to realize months later that not getting it was the best thing that ever happened to you? We romanticize people. We project qualities onto them that they may never have had. We get attached to the idea of someone, not always the reality. So when she leaves, you're not just losing a person, you're losing the future you imagined with her. That fantasy of shared memories, plans, love, maybe even a family. But here's the hard pill. If she could leave you for another man, was she ever truly in alignment with that future? Or were you just carrying all the emotional weight while she was mentally checking out long before she physically did? Pain is a brutal but effective teacher. And every time someone exits your life, especially like this, there's a hidden message underneath the heartbreak. It might be that you ignored red flags because you were afraid of being alone. Or maybe you were trying to force compatibility through effort when compatibility should feel natural. Or maybe you simply placed her on a pedestal, turning a human being into your entire world, and now that she's gone, you feel like that world collapsed. But that collapse is where transformation begins, because now you get to rebuild it stronger, sharper, and with a better understanding of yourself. Her rejection, her choice to be with someone else, isn't the end. It's an unveiling, a curtain pulled back to show you what's really real. And what's real is this: you were never in control of her actions, only your response. You were never in control of her loyalty, only your boundaries. And if she walked away, then let her. Not because you're weak, but because fighting to keep someone who doesn't see your worth is beneath the man you are becoming. So instead of seeing this as a loss, see it as liberation. She made the decision for you. She removed herself. She freed up your energy. Do you know how powerful that is? You don't have to drag dead weight anymore. You don't have to guess where you stand. You don't have to try to fix something that was only ever temporary. She walked. Now walk with your head held high in the opposite direction. Because what's ahead of you is always more valuable than what chose to leave. Some of the most powerful versions of men are born in moments like this, not when things are going well, but when everything they thought they needed gets stripped away. That's where clarity is forged. That's when you start to build purpose, identity, direction, not around a woman, but around your mission, your principles, your future. So every time your mind tries to go back to her, remind yourself, she made a choice. And in that choice, you found freedom. When a woman chooses another man, most men instinctively feel this burning need to prove themselves. They want to fight to get her back, to convince her she made a mistake, to show her they're the better man. But here's what that does: it flips the power dynamic. You're no longer leading your own story. You're now chasing someone who just devalued you. And the second you start chasing someone who walked away from you, you automatically place her above you. You send a signal, not just to her, but to yourself, that you believe she has more value than you. That's the most dangerous thing a man can do to his own identity. You're a man, you're Val. You doesn't come from who chooses you. It comes from who you become. So when she makes that decision to walk away, to entertain another man, to test the waters elsewhere, your response has to be stoic. Not because you're emotionless, but because you're disciplined. You have standards. You have dignity, and a man with dignity doesn't chase what disrespects him. He doesn't compete for attention that should have been his by default. He doesn't become a circus act, jumping through emotional hoops, hoping to win back someone who already discarded him like an option. You see, most women don't leave overnight. The decision to be with another man is often something they've already played out in their minds for weeks, maybe months. While you were being consistent, loyal, emotionally present, she may have already been entertaining the idea of someone else, maybe subtly, maybe quietly, but it was there. Now ask yourself this. Do you really want to chase someone who was building a plan B while you were giving her your best? That's not love, that's betrayal masked as exploration. That's not someone you fight for, that's someone you walk away from, immediately, without apology. Because chasing after someone who left doesn't just cost you your pride, it costs you your peace, your focus, your time, and worst of all, your identity. You start to become reactive instead of proactive. You start checking your phone every hour hoping she texts, crafting replies with surgical precision to seem unbothered, analyzing her social media for clues, comparing yourself to the guy she's now with. And every second you do that, you drain your own masculinity. You shift your mindset from abundance to scarcity. You forget that you are the prize. Let's flip the perspective. When a man walks away from a woman who chose someone else, when he says nothing, doesn't retaliate, doesn't beg, that woman feels the impact. Why? Because silence is power, detachment is power. Your ability to not react when someone tries to trigger your ego, that's the mark of a man in control of himself. And here's the secret: most of the time she expects you to chase. She wants to see you hurt. Not because she's evil, but because validation is addictive. And if you give her that, you feed her ego while starving your own. You win by walking away with composure. You win by staying grounded. You win by not allowing her decision to alter your direction. This doesn't mean you don't feel the pain. Of course you do. You're human, but a disciplined man feels everything and still doesn't move unless it aligns with his values. So when she goes, let her. Not because you don't care, but because you care more about what kind of man you're becoming, and chasing her would only slow that process down. A woman who truly respects you would never put you in a position where you have to fight for her loyalty. You don't chase what devalues you, you elevate yourself so far above it that looking back feels like a waste of vision. And when you master that, you become untouchable, not to women but to anything that tries to shake your peace. One of the most painful, yet liberating, experiences a man can go through is watching a woman he once trusted choose someone else and seeing, maybe for the first time, who she truly is. The truth is, most men fall in love with an idea, a version of a woman created in their mind based on potential, moments of affection, and emotional highs. But very few men actually see the full picture until they are forced to. And nothing forces clarity like betrayal. When a woman you were loyal to, honest with, present for, suddenly starts giving her time and attention to another man, that fantasy shatters. The illusion breaks. And what's left behind is her true character, not the mask, not the charm, not the words, but the reality of how she treats someone who once gave her everything. It's easy to justify her actions. She was confused. She didn't know what she wanted. She made a mistake. Maybe you weren't enough. That's what your wounded ego will whisper. But look deeper. A woman who replaces you quickly didn't just stumble into a new relationship. She was emotionally checking out long before she physically walked away. That conversation with the friend, the sudden distance, the change in tone, the lack of appreciation, all of those were warning signs. And the truth is, she didn't show you a new side of herself. She showed you the side you were too loyal to see. That's not bitterness. That's not cynicism. That's reality. When someone leaves you for another person, they're making a statement. You weren't enough for me to stay. And as harsh as that sounds, it's a blessing in disguise. Because now, you no longer have to guess. You no longer have to wonder. You no longer have to keep giving energy to someone who already mentally replaced you before you even realized there was competition. That moment of truth when she walks away is painful, yes, but it's also one of the most honest moments you'll ever experience in a relationship. You see, you weren't blinded by love, you were blinded by hope. Hope that she would stay, that she meant what she said, that she shared the same depth of loyalty you offered. But hope without truth is a trap, and now that the truth is visible, you're finally free. Here's the part most men struggle with: accepting what she showed you. Because once you see her true nature, you have two choices: deny it and chase her anyway, or accept it and rise above it. The first option keeps you stuck in a loop of pain and confusion, constantly trying to fix something that was never built on the same foundation you believed it was. The second option is hard, but it's powerful. It's the path of detachment. It's choosing peace over chaos, clarity over delusion, growth over regression. And make no mistake, she didn't just make a decision. She revealed a pattern, because the way someone exits your life says more about their character than the way they entered it. Anyone can act loving in the beginning. Anyone can play the role of the ideal partner when things are easy. But how they behave when they're tempted, when they're bored, when they're no longer getting what they want, that's the real measure of who they are. If she chose to ghost you, lie to you, or replace you with no explanation, that's not a woman with high emotional maturity. That's someone who avoids accountability and chases novelty over stability. That's not your loss, that's your escape. It's also important to understand this. Your reaction to seeing her true nature defines the next chapter of your life. Do you let her betrayal turn you bitter, vengeful, closed off? Or do you let it sharpen you not into a colder man, but into a wiser one? A man who sees red flags and no longer paints them white. A man who values actions over words. A man who knows that loyalty is not something you beg for, it's something you recognize in someone's consistent behavior over time. Every relationship is a mirror, and the way she handled you reflects more about her than it ever did about you. You might feel like she took something from you, your love, your time, your trust, but in reality, she gave you a gift, the truth, and the truth will always set a man free, even if it hurts first. When you finally stop romanticizing the version of her you created in your head, and start seeing the one who stood in front of you, you'll realize you didn't lose a queen, you lost a woman who never truly earned the title. And that realization will become the foundation of the man you are meant to become. One of the biggest traps a man can fall into after a woman chooses someone else is the belief that her choice somehow determines his worth. It's an emotional reflex. You start thinking, what does he have that I don't? You analyze everything, your appearance, your status, your behavior, your bank account. You tear yourself apart trying to find the flaw that made her walk away. But here's a truth that will liberate you if you fully embrace it. Her choosing someone else does not lower your value as a man. Her choice speaks volumes about her standards, not your identity. Think of it like this. If someone prefers fast food over a gourmet meal, it doesn't make the gourmet meal less valuable, it just shows what that person's palate is like. The same goes for you. If she preferred someone flashier, more chaotic, or more emotionally manipulative, that doesn't mean you lacked something essential. It might just mean you were too stable for her chaos. You were too grounded for her drama. Too real for her games. Some women are drawn to confusion because peace scares them. And when you offer consistency, when you bring structure, maturity, and depth, it doesn't always resonate with someone who hasn't done the inner work to value that. This is where your inner dialogue becomes critical, because your ego is fragile in these moments. Your mind will try to recreate the past and obsess over what you should have done differently. It'll play back conversations, decisions, small moments where you feel like you failed. But that's a mental illusion. That's your self-worth under attack by your emotional wound. You can't base your identity on someone else's indecision or lack of discernment. When someone walks away from something solid to chase something uncertain, that's not a reflection of your weakness, it's a reflection of their confusion. What you need to understand is that real value doesn't fluctuate based on who acknowledges it. A diamond in the dirt is still a diamond. If someone picks up a rock and leaves the diamond behind, it doesn't make the diamond worthless. It simply reveals their inability to recognize value when it's in front of them. You are that diamond, and if she left, it's not your job to dim your shine to make sense of her blindness. This is the perfect time to reinforce one of the most powerful principles of masculinity. You are the foundation, not the decoration. Your worth isn't ornamental. It's structural. A man builds, he protects, he leads. He provides emotional stability, and none of those qualities can be measured by the fleeting approval of someone who couldn't see their value. When you start grounding your confidence in who you are, not in who chooses you, you become untouchable, because now your emotional center is internal, not external. You're not moved by someone walking in or out of your life, because you know your value stays constant either way. Now here's the part where growth happens, when you stop trying to prove your worth and start living in it. You don't need to prove to her or anyone that you were good enough. That ship has sailed. What you need to do now is align with your potential. Refocus on your mission. Rebuild stronger boundaries. Upgrade your life. The best revenge is not replacing her, it's replacing the version of yourself that tolerated her confusion. Let that sink in, because that's what most men forget. You're not here to win her back. You're here to win yourself back, to reclaim the parts of you that got lost trying to be enough for someone who couldn't even be honest with you. The parts that became anxious, uncertain, overly accommodating, all to hold onto something that, deep down, was already slipping away. That's over now, and in its place comes a renewed sense of who you are and what you truly deserve. The truth is, the right woman you woman will never make you question your worth. She won't make you feel like you're in a constant competition. She won't compare you to other men, test your patience, or play games to manipulate your emotions. She'll see your effort and match it. She'll recognize your loyalty and protect it. She'll feel safe in your presence, not because you're perfect, but because you're consistent, emotionally grounded, and real. But until she comes along, or even if she never does, your worth remains intact. It doesn't rise or fall with someone's decision to stay or go. It's rooted in your character, your integrity, your discipline. And if someone couldn't see that, it's not your loss to mourn, it's theirs. Because a man who knows his value isn't afraid to walk alone, and he damn sure doesn't let someone else define it. There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes that his peace is more valuable than his pride. That moment often comes after heartbreak, betrayal, or abandonment. It comes when the woman he trusted, loved, and gave his energy to decides to invest that same attention into another man. And what most men don't realize at first, what they only come to understand much later, is that the real power lies not in retaliation, not in proving her wrong, not in winning her back, but in preserving his peace and letting go. Because in a world that constantly tells men to chase, to pursue, to compete, choosing stillness is an act of rebellion. Choosing peace is an act of self-respect. When she walks away, when she turns her attention to someone else, your ego wants to fight. It wants to defend itself. It wants answers, closure, explanations. It wants to hear her admit that she made a mistake. But that desire, that burning need to get the last word or to be proven right, is exactly what keeps men trapped in cycles of emotional dependence. Because the moment you start needing someone else's acknowledgement or regret to feel whole again, you give them power over your peace. And a man who gives his peace away is a man who has lost control of his life. Letting go, on the other hand, is not weakness. It's strength in its highest form. It's the quiet decision to stop bleeding for someone who wouldn't have even noticed if you collapsed. It's realizing that no explanation is worth disturbing your inner calm. It's knowing that whatever clarity you're chasing externally can almost always be found internally through reflection, not reaction. You don't need her apology. You don't need the full story. You don't even need to understand why she chose him. You need to protect your energy. You need to safeguard your future. You need to stay loyal to your peace. And here's the irony: the more you chase closure, the further you drift from healing. Closure is not something she gives you. It's something you give yourself. It's the moment you look in the mirror and say, I don't need to keep revisiting this pain to make sense of it. I've felt enough, I've learned enough, and I choose to move forward. It's the moment when you stop rehearsing the past and start building the future. And that future begins with peace. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's not flashy. It's not dramatic. But it's powerful. It's the foundation for every great thing a man will ever build. A man at peace isn't reactive. He's strategic. He doesn't argue with people who left. He learns from it, adjusts his standards, and moves in silence. He doesn't stalk her online or wonder who she's texting. He's too busy sculpting his body, sharpening his mind, growing his business, or chasing his purpose. Because he understands that his legacy isn't defined by who stayed or who left, it's defined by what he built regardless of who came and went. There's also a deeper level of peace that comes from forgiveness. Not forgiving her because she asked for it, but forgiving her because you refuse to carry resentment. Resentment is emotional debt. It accumulates interest over time. It weighs you down. And every time you rehearse that betrayal, every time you play it back in your head, you relive it. You re-injure yourself. But forgiveness says, I release you from my mind. I free myself from this narrative. I no longer need to keep this wound open. And that act, that simple internal shift, gives you back your emotional bandwidth. Now that energy can be used to build, to grow, to elevate. Some men confuse peace with indifference. They think letting go means they didn't care, That's not true. You cared deeply, you loved, you were loyal. You were present, but you reached a point where you understood that no amount of care could force someone to value you. And from that realization, peace was born. Peace is knowing you did your part, that you stayed true to yourself, that you didn't betray your own standards, and because of that, you can walk away with your head high, not because you won the game, but because you refused to play one that insulted your dignity. And make no mistake, she will feel that peace. Maybe not immediately, maybe not even consciously, but the silence, the absence, the lack of chaos, the stillness, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. It tells her you're not broken, you're not desperate, you're not trapped in bitterness. You've evolved, you've transcended, you've chosen yourself, and when a man truly chooses his peace over everything else, there is nothing more powerful, because while others are chasing validation, reacting to betrayal, and drowning in emotional chaos, he's calm, focused, unshakable, and that is the kind of man no one forgets. Every man will reach a crossroads after heartbreak, especially when he's been replaced. And in that vulnerable moment, when the emotional wound is fresh and the silence echoes louder than her goodbye, a man faces a defining decision. Will he use this pain to destroy himself, or will he use it to evolve? This is where the real winners separate themselves from the rest, because while some men spiral into depression, addiction, or endless cycles of chasing validation from other women, others take a different route. They look inward, they rebuild, they reforge themselves into something stronger than they were before. And this transformation doesn't come from comfort. It comes from chaos. It comes from being cracked wide open by betrayal and using that as raw material for evolution. When a woman chooses another man, it feels like rejection. It feels like failure. Your pride takes a hit. Your confidence gets rattled. And the immediate urge is to try to fix something to reclaim what was lost. But what most men fail to see is that the loss itself is a gift, not because losing her made you better, but because it revealed everything inside you that still needed to grow. It exposed the insecurity that depended on her validation. It highlighted the emotional dependency you may have been ignoring. It revealed the parts of your identity that were tied to being chosen by someone else. And once you're aware of that, you have the opportunity to begin a transformation that has nothing to do with her and everything to do with becoming the most dominant, capable, disciplined version of yourself. This is the time when a man must go dark, not emotionally dark, but inward. He must stop explaining himself to people who never valued him, stop trying to convince others of his worth, and instead redirect every ounce of his energy into the process of becoming undeniable. That means developing physical strength not to impress, but to discipline yourself. It means sharpening your mental focus, reading, learning, evolving, because a sharp mind commands respect even in silence. It means pursuing mastery in something that matters to you, building your business, expanding your skill set, crafting a vision so powerful that no woman could ever become the center of your world again. You have to become a man who is so grounded in his mission that any woman who walks away simply removes a distraction. Not because you don't feel pain, but because your purpose is bigger than your pain. When a man has no purpose, a breakup feels like the end of his world. But when a man is rooted in his purpose, a breakup becomes a chapter, not the whole story. And the irony is, the more you invest in your mission, the more attractive you become. Not because you're trying to be, but because men with direction, with ambition, with stoic composure are magnetic. They don't chase energy, they attract it. And the woman who left, she may notice, she may feel that shift. She may come back, but by then you won't care, because now you've seen what happens when you place your power in someone else's hands, and you'll never do it again. This is how you win, not by proving her wrong, not by posting photos to make her jealous, not by replacing her with the first woman who shows you attention, but by stepping so fully into your higher self that you look back and thank the pain for waking you up. You realize that your transformation didn't begin when she left. It began the moment you stopped trying to chase what was gone and started building what will last. Every workout becomes a meditation. Every new skill becomes a brick in the empire you're building. Every disciplined day without her becomes a statement. Asterisk, I don't need you to become the man I was born to be. Asterisk, and here's what most men don't understand: this kind of evolution cannot be faked. You can't pretend your way into confidence. You can't trick yourself into resilience. It must be earned. And it's earned through suffering, through silence, through the discipline of choosing growth over distraction. There will be days when the loneliness hits hard, when you miss her laugh, her touch, the way she looked at you. But instead of drowning in nostalgia, you redirect that ache into your craft. You channel that energy into something that outlives your heartbreak. You use it like fuel, like fire, forging yourself in the quiet until the world can't ignore what you've become. Because real winning isn't loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't need applause. It's silent. It's internal. It's the kind of success that builds slowly, but once it arrives, it speaks for itself. And the man who walks through heartbreak and emerges stronger is a man no one can break again, not because he's cold, not because he's heartless, but because he's mastered the art of pain. He's alchemized it into progress, and he knows now deep in his bones that nothing outside of him will ever hold power over him again. So if she chooses another man, let her go. Not out of bitterness, not out of spite, but out of power, because your value was never dependent on her ability to recognize it. You win not by reacting, not by chasing, not by proving, but by transforming. By choosing silence over desperation, growth over validation, peace over drama, you win when you realize that her leaving was not the end of your story, but the beginning of a greater one. A story where you rise from the ashes of rejection, not broken, but reborn stronger, wiser, and more focused than ever. Let her go, and keep becoming the man she'll regret losing and the world won't be able to ignore.